Hello and welcome to this new video. Today I'll be doing this quick sketch for Historia race. As you may probably know, she belongs to the Attack on Titan anime series. She's like this character who has been hiding the past that was very painful to her until she realizes the truth by a secret that the company that she had reveals to her. Her name was Ymir, and she tells her to live as someone that does not regret their own decisions. So it's a very important message conveyed into this character, and it appealed to me that I was going to do something that had to do with her and tie around some of the nuts that probably were left behind for an approximate better ending to the series. If you have not read the manga, well, you may do so if you wish. But this season, namely on December 2021, Season 4, which is the final season for Attack on Titan, will be airing in Japan by Studio Mappa. So that means this is the season finale, and there are going to be huge surprises. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, and right now we're seeing how the grease pencil tool is sketching. I created these presets for the materials so that you can have the highlights, the shadows, and even the whites of the background painted with the tool. And I want to quickly address this because when you paint in grease pencil, you are literally drawing with transparency. Whenever we paint in a 2D paint program, we have a black or white or gray canvas as the background. Since in Blender you will be painting without that, you need to additionally create a layer that will hold specifically the white fields like I'm doing right now. Now the beautiful thing about this is that I created this file with preset materials to do sketches. Just look at that beautiful ocean. Maybe we can stylize that ocean some more. Presenting you this behind the scenes project that I'm doing for this month, where, as I promised before, I'm going to be diving from here on into more grease pencil stuff. And this is because Blender 3 now has a very interesting toolset to work with animation. And right now I think I'm using version 3, yes. So one thing that it's like mind-blowing because we can finally do animation here in 2D plus 3D, combining different effects, then rendering it out to a different set of passes so that we can later compose it inside Blender now that the compositor is very speedy, or we can output the render layers to another program such as After Effects, or in my case DaVinci Resolve. I really like that application. That software is very powerful for color grading, finishing, and everything else, even grain. Because I intended this month to show you the complete process, how you can make something similar like this. Okay, so that's my aim. This is my inspiration source. So as you can see, we have some things here. Okay, so what are we going to do now? So we have the camera, and the camera, there's something about the Attack on Titan as produced in the first initial seasons by Studio Wit. They use 3D, and some of those animations in 3D were very spectacular. Some others were not as powerful, but I want to show you where the effect for mixing 2D and 3D mixes or breaks. You know, like right now, as you've heard at the beginning, we have this smooth camera zoom out or dolly out, and then it slightly pans to the left. Okay, so this is all good and stuff, and what we're going to do here is to plot the camera from this movement all the way over here, because we intend to make it skip frames. This is a soft movement which matches everything in the scene. That is cool. That is what we want, because cameras, please, I really want you to consider this. Camera language is very important inside an anime production. If your camera is not another character, is if your camera is not communicating effectively the action in the scene, you cannot mix hybrid 2D and 3D works. It's going to be very difficult. This is why Attack on Titan Season 1, 2, and 3, developed by WIT, was very unique because they have all these flights, all these aerial fights, and the camera movement is just marvelous. So what we're going to do here is to select a camera. Right now I have it pinpointing to this object, which is my aim, or rather look at. If I move this thing, I can move my camera. Right now you can see that I have a constraint, a track 2 constraint, okay? And then you can see it's -z, and then the y is up, okay? So y is up right here for the camera, but not for this scene. Many years ago, ever since I came to Blender, you know, y is always forward. So when this track 2 object says up, we always would mark Z. And this is what would cause the camera to roll in a strange direction. But right now, if I delete this, which I shouldn't do, but I'm going to delete it, I'm going to select the camera, so you can see right here in my outline, and then I'm going to add the track 2 constraint, which is basically the Blender version of any other Autodesk look at target. Okay, that's how it's called. So I have my target, which I named looked at so that no one misses it. Look at, and automatically the camera then sticks to that location. You can see that now it doesn't jump, it doesn't roll, it doesn't do any weird stuff. This is finally fixed, and now you can, you know, just create a null, an empty, I'm sorry, and then have the camera track to that object. So that's cool. Next step, F3, bake action, yes. It's going to ask us how are we going to bake this. Okay, so we're going to bake from frame 0 all the way to frame 77, just for this object alone. So start frame number 1 and end it on 77. What are we going to do? Are we going to only key the selected bones? No, this is now not a bone, so uncheck that. Are we going to bake the visual keying? That means that even the constraint is going to get baked in here, and yes, we care for that. Are we going to clear the constraints after we do that? Probably it's a good idea, but not right now. I'm not going to do that because after the baking, from this segment all the way over here, this object, this look at target, is going to be moving over here. So I'm not going to delete it. But usually it's a good idea to consider or to organize your content so that you can bake and delete the constraints, because if you don't, then you will have a double transformation by the baked keys and also by the constraint. So that's why you have this option here. So I guess that's all, and we're going to bake the data into a pose or to an object. No, we're going to bake it into an object. I've always tried to explain this in a very clear sense. If you press N, I'm going to be skipping this for just a second. If you press N in this window, you're going to see up here that your location, your rotation, and your scaling, this is commonly known as SRT. The transformations for the objects are commonly known as SRT. That goes for scale, rotation, and translation, which in our case would be L. So this is known as the SRT transformations, and that's what it's asking us here. So F3, bake action, 1 to 70, what was that? 77. And visual keying, yes, this is not a bone. So when it says bake the data to the pose or to the object, we do not have a clip animation created, because then we would use pose. But since we're baking this into an object, directly into the object, the SRT transformations, we're going to select that. So visual keying and object, that's it. Press OK, and then this should work. Now if you select your camera, you're going to notice that it still has the movement, from the look at, but all of this has been baked already. Okay? And why did we do this? If every single keyframe already moves the way it was moving before, so what's the difference? Why do we want to make this? If you press Ctrl Tab right here, you're going to notice how the animation curve is done. So it starts accelerating slowly, and then it accelerates linearly. Let me see if I can write. No, I knew it. Annotations? No. Anyways, so from this point all the way to this point, we have a linear acceleration, and then we have a curve, a slope from the camera, which deaccelerates. So what we want to do here is to open this, and we want to locate the Z movement, because if you notice, the Z movement, it's linearly going backwards. So Shift H. If you press Shift H, everything is going to be hidden except the Z location. Now this is very useful because every other keyframe we do not need it. If you press Alt H, it's going to unhide everything else, as you can see here. But if you press Shift H, by selecting the Z location, you can notice that it's a yellowish color. This is my theme, the Blender V theme, by the way. So Shift H will hide everything. So now let's maximize this by pressing Control and Spacebar. So now we have all of these keyframes, and as you can see, they are kind of distanced, but what we want to do here is to dent or skip frames. Select your camera, and now we're going to press F3 again, bake animation, and if you notice down here, let me have Historia pointed to you. Frame step. Do you see that? That's what we're looking for. So now we're going to bake from 1 to 77, or rather, let's bake it up to 76, because we're going to use every 3 steps, okay? Every 3 frames, we're going to bake a position for the camera. We have the camera selected, don't forget. And don't forget that Historia, or Krista, however you know her from the series, it's going to go every 3 steps baking 1 keyframe. This is exactly what we want. But Mr. Schiller, if we do that, aren't we getting the same curve? Yes, we are. Control Tab, and now we have it right here. Select the Z location, Shift H, Control Spacebar to maximize, and this is where the magic is going to happen. Now we effectively have, if you can see here, a keyframe on frame number 10. A keyframe on frame number, this should be somewhere around 13, and such, 16, 19, and so on and so forth. So let me zoom this so you can closely see. See that? This one is on frame 16, effectively being every 3 frames, and this one is going to be on frame 19, effectively going in 3 frames. Okay? So I'm zooming in so that you can see it. You can see all of these numbers and keyframes. So we're going to select all of this, and here's where the magic happened. Control T, and I'm sorry, that was for the time up here. Just press T, letter T, and now we're going to set the keyframe interpolation to constant. Now we have the dented, the characteristic skipping frames, the dented animation for the camera. Look at that. So from this position is going to jump to this position, is going to jump to that position, and let's see how it looks. We have the same thing here. Control Tab to go back to the timeline, and then I'm going to play. And now pack. You should feel the hit. You should feel the hits, and from here on it's just smooth camera animation. Mr. Schiller, I don't think the effect was very prominent. Basically, it didn't feel as a very hard cut. But if you notice here, the camera is jumping. Look at that. Boom. Every 3 frames, the camera is jumping smoothly. And you may probably not perceive it right now, but if you see right here, it's going to tell you that the frame rate is around 10. So, Mr. Schiller, do you mean that if we do this process again and we do it by every 6 frames, what would happen? Well, let's see. Let's Control Z a couple of times. Control Z a couple of times. Alright. So here's my camera. F3. Take the action every 6 frames. Let's see how we do. Now, don't forget that animation in reality, because this Walt Disney concept that every movie, every animated movie has to be animated at 24 frames, is kind of fictitious in anime. In anime, we animate at 8 or 12 frames per second. That means that all those 24 pictures that we are used to hearing, it's not really 24 full frames. We only work in 12 or at the most 8 to 12, depending on the scene. If you want more frames per second, then you can do insert those frames. That's why you see sometimes that in some anime action movies, or in some anime action scenes rather, sorry, we have smoother transitions, smoother or kind of a very realistic movement, and it looks awkward. Have you noticed that? But all of the time, when we are seeing a Naruto fight or a Dragon Ball Z fight, we see very few frames going on here and there. Okay, so 8 frames. Let's go. You know what? Let's do that directly. I'm going to be doing every 8 frames, so that's okay. Whoops. That was my bad. I forgot to put the limit, which is 77. In our case, 76, 8. Not the visual key, yes, and yep, that's all. Bake data to the object. Very good. So now let's play it back. And now we're rolling, if you notice up here, 15 frames per second. Right here, 15 frames per second. And it's looking pretty much like the anime. And now the camera slows down and slowly, pans to the left. Look at that, that's perfect. Another important feature that I want to point out in Blender 3.0, the new Blender. Although you can do this already on 2.92, I think, this is already active. Check this out. If you press Alt in your keyboard and then you press the middle mouse button, you're going to get this timeline directly on your viewport of preference. That means that whenever your mouse is hovering, in the viewport that is hovering, you're going to get this scroll back and forth slider, if we can say it so, for your timeline. Look at that. So you can go to any frame and then you will see which one is doing what in the time that you rather go forward or backwards in time. Now, I'm doing this on this viewport. I'm going to press again Alt plus middle mouse button, hold it, and then drag to the left, drag to the right. And as you can see, I'm doing this sliding in the camera. I'm not moving the camera is just being animated. So if I go past this point all the way to the right, you're going to be noticing that the animation timeline plays back down there in the screen. Look at that. So you can even go past beyond your current view, in this case, and your timeline down here will continue to play. So let's say if I leave this here, 141, press Alt and middle mouse button, then scroll forward, scroll backwards. See that? You can go anywhere, and this sliding is particularly useful whenever you're editing your own grease pencil object. I'm going to focus on Historia right now. Then I'm going to press Tab. I'm going to enter the draw mode. I'm going to switch down here into Dope Sheet and then Grease Pencil. This is the timeline that you want to animate so that Krista will animate her hair, for example. In this particular case, in this particular file, I'm not going to be drawing her hair frame by frame. No, I am going to be using the bendy bones technique. So that means I'm going to create a base hair for her head, and from there I'm going to draw grease pencil strokes and grease pencil fills. Then I'm going to be rigging that hair. I'm going to animate it procedurally, and then I'm going to be using wiggle bones. So what that means is that we're going to have a procedural animation driving a grease pencil object, and all of that is going to be driven by drivers and also bendy bones. So we have a lot ahead of us for this month to create. I'm not going to be spoiling you what she's pointing at, but all I can say is that when this is ready, you're going to learn a lot of new tricks in Blender 3.0 that Grease Pencil has. So thank you very much for your support, and if you have any questions about your current projects that you're doing on your own in Grease Pencil, in Blender 3.0, in Blender 2.92, whatever you need, except geometry nodes, because I don't want to get too far ahead of us, you can ask any of those questions regarding this video and the topics that we've covered today in the comment section down below. So yes, like I mentioned before, and this is what I want you to take away from this video, you need to work with your camera. You definitely need to animate, to step it, to do the kind of movements that you see in animes like, in this case, Attack on Titan. I'm going to be finishing this complete scene, and I hope you keep looking forward to these video progresses on how this is done. Okay, thank you very much. This has been Pierre Schiller, and thank you so much for your support.